Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about trading our morals and standards and all of these things for money, right? Because that is what the culture has pushed us towards. So first off, I want to start off by talking about how this delusion, right? Like let's kind of break down the era where the buzzword delusion kind of went around. Let's kind of break down the manifestation era, right? And what a byproduct of that was. You have people who are literally writing on self-delusion. And I noticed something about a lot of people who happen to garner popularity or attention without really having that hard work ethic and not really having any backing in regard to their work, right? Like just literally for the sole purpose of kind of like influencer culture, influencer lifestyle, people following people because they want to attain certain things because they feel as though those things will buy them respect, which at this point, we've reached that point in society where literally money can actually buy you human decency, right? It's kind of crazy and it just kind of blows my mind. I think that there used to be a time where you would talk to anybody, and I can't really say this for everyone because I know a lot of people aren't well versed like that. They're not really, you know what I mean? But there definitely used to be a time where, just to simply have a conversation or just to simply be respectful to somebody was not seen as like, it wasn't seen as this thing that you had to earn, right? That was just more so like a common sense type of thing. A lot of people talking about, what you entertain and things like that. And I get that, right? Like I 100% think that being around the wrong people, hanging around the wrong company, it's not going to end well for you, right? Like you're going to find yourself being influenced by these people. But there comes a certain point in life where you have to know who you are. And you have to realize that if you are so shaky in your self-esteem and you are so shaky within yourself and your self-worth that you going in a certain room to either be an inspiration or wherever God may be using you, right? Like if you can't maintain your own self-composure, then that says a lot about you. And I think that we're more so moving into this space where it's like people not only are being treated like commodities, but everybody is so opportunistic, right? Because people are yearning for respect. People are yearning to feel seen. People are yearning to feel heard, right? People are yearning for compassion. I went to get coffee today and, it was just, honey, lo behold to me, right? Lo behold to me. Now, this is the second time something like this has happened to me. So I just kind of want to start off by saying that. But this is the second time this has happened to me where I have met with a black man, seen a black man has provided me service or whatever. And for this, I'm going to use this particular situation because this is the coffee, right? I went to go get some coffee at this coffee shop. The guy who was taking my order was just like so rude to me, like super condescending, just very much belittling. And, he went on to just kind of like huff and puff when I was like trying to get understanding of my order. And what's so crazy is that I noticed that the woman next to me, right, she was a white woman. He was so kind to her, so respectful to her. He was even asking her about her daughter. He brought them their coffee. I noticed he poured my coffee and just like set it on the counter. I didn't even know that it was, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know that was my coffee. I went to ask, okay, cream and sugar. Like, he just was like super, super rude, super, super nasty. And being that this is something that has happened to me twice now, I had to kind of just like talk about how this manosphere rhetoric is starting to be demonstrated and modeled in the real world where Black women are literally being disrespected. Like, this is crazy. The reason why I don't really position this into a space where it's just like, oh my God, Black women are being disrespected, even though this is a real thing. A big part of it is because I noticed that it's the same for men. Now, I will say I don't typically see a lot of women just like blatantly outright disrespecting Black men, but I know that that's a thing. And I know a lot of men are carrying that, feeling miserable and so forth. I think what social media did was robbed us of the normalities of life, right? It's not abnormal or lesser than to see someone working at a job, right? Like we need people in service for positions, right? Everything is a stepping stone. You have people who are in their 40s who have also been, enlightened by this technological era where they are starting to pursue their passions, right? They're starting to pursue their dreams. They're starting to wake into the knowledge that you don't have to just work in corporate America, right? So you have some people who are in certain positions like, at this coffee shop, for example, who may be starting over in life, So I just think to be looking down on people based on their socioeconomic positioning is crazy. I also think what this does on the opposite side of things, because we start to put people who have achieved materialism in the real world, we kind of start to esteem them as people who are just like so awesome. They have all the answers. They have all the wisdom. They know something that we don't know. They are more gifted than us. They are more brilliant than us, right? When none of these things are necessarily true. And so what happens is we start to place celebrityism as the token, as the marker for our self-compassion and our love, right? We start to look at people and say, you're not really worthy of that, right? And we don't realize what that's doing to a lot of people. You have a lot of miserable people who are running around, who are wreaking havoc in the lives of so many people. That's why, in the last podcast episode, I told you guys, like, being sturdy within yourself, you know what I mean? Because it's at this point where it's like, that experience could have easily went left. Me personally, I'm not really someone that I really do feel like when you're a real person and like, I don't know, like, I just don't feel like, I don't know, like I'm not, and this is the thing too, this is a man, right? So at this point, I'm already looking at you like there's got to be something going on here. Because to be honest, that's not normal for a man to just be like disrespectful towards a woman. And I think because we have normalized it so much to the point where even celebrities, right? No one really holds men accountable when they're disrespectful to women, right? So this is something that is seen as normal, but you have to understand that's not the natural nature of a man. Like a man is not innately, like he's not wired to be disrespectful to women. He's wired to protect women. So when something's off, when he's disrespecting women, that's not normal. You know what I mean? Like, and I think unfortunately it's so important for us to rewrite a lot of these narratives because unfortunately so much of this stuff has been normalized. I even take, for example, like I'm going to just insert Chris Brown here because, the whole Rihanna thing, it just comes up a lot. And, anytime someone references his name, he's obviously spoken out about this even, recently this year. Just how, he's grown so much from that. And that was when he was 17 years old. And then he goes on to, exert blah, 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 and defend himself, right? I think the biggest thing with that, even looking at it from a cultural standpoint, not reading too much into the case, but looking at the whole situation with Megan Thee Stallion and so forth. And I just noticed that there's a common thread that goes along within the male community, right? The male diaspora, right? In regards to the disrespect of women and how they never use those situations as a stepping stone, as a teaching tool to tell other young men, hey, this is not okay. That's not how you treat a woman. You know what I mean? That's not how you conduct yourself. Like, if you feel like you're being disrespected, you need to leave. You know what I mean? Like, don't even date someone like that who you feel like has this type of temper, right? And furthermore, looking into their internal issues. Why are you dealing with someone who's abusing you? You know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot to unpack there. And I just don't think that those are the conversations that are being had in their communities. And it's really sad because, this type of normalization is obviously destructive. And I think that this is absolutely the byproduct of women being like, oh, I'm not going to deal with these men, right? These men can da-da-da-da-da. I'm out of, you know what I mean? Like, we completely see that. And we see women, revolting in terms of relationships, right? We see women being in a space where they're like, okay, well, if this is the case, then I'm going to be a single mother, right? The mominaire, all of these different things. This is merely a byproduct of men and their stuff, right? And like I said, I'm here for really having a conversation and unpacking why don't men hold other men accountable. I believe that a big part of this is due to the lack of raising in young Black boys. I cannot stress this enough. Due to the criminalization of young Black boys and boyhood, right? First of all, we can even start with the sector of emotional availability, right? Nurturing, compassion, all those things that we don't typically see in Black boyhood. I remember growing up, a lot of that stuff was just kind of like exploited. Like if a boy would hug his friend, people would be like, oh, you homo. Or they'd be like, oh, not to be homo, bro, right? Like it became very perverse. It became a very perverse thing for young boys to have a brotherhood where they could cry and be, you know what I mean? Like just be there for boys. I don't know what guys do, but like, you know what I mean? Like that became something that was perverse because it was oftentimes linked to homosexuality. So I think that was the moment where it was like men were, and I can't even really say that that was just in my era. I think that that's kind of been what it's always been. I'm not really sure if there's ever been a culture where men have had that, but I've noticed that men who do have that, typically it's a little bit different, but a lot of times it's not really a lot of conversation, and it could be because men don't have the language, right? One thing I know about self-expression, books will liberate you because you can express yourself. You have an understanding of what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and you're not so congested. I couldn't imagine for myself the ways in which I would act in society, how I would show up, how I present myself if I never had an outlet to express it, right? That's why I'm so passionate in telling people about their gifts, like follow your gifts, follow your passions, follow your dreams in terms of what God is leading you to, because that's where your treasure lies, right? My papa told me that. So that's, word to him, shout out to him, I'm paraphrasing, but for real, because there's freedom in that for you. You know what I mean? That's your avenue where you're going to channel your expression. And I just know for myself, I would not be the woman that I am today had I never had that. So, that's one element of it. And then the other element is just the normalization of the abuse, right? No one really holding you accountable and telling you, hey, that's not what you do. You know what I mean? That's not how you conduct yourself. A lot of times it's like, oh yeah, people make a mockery out of it instead of correcting these men. So back to the whole criminalization piece and just kind of tying that, statement together. We just kind of have to realize that young Black boys are criminalized. When you're criminalized at the age of 9, you're no longer seen as a boy, right? You're seen as a young man. And so instead of people telling you no little Johnny, right? No Bruce. That's my dog name. His name is Bruce. That's not what you do. That's not how you do that. That's, you know what I mean? No, let me show you this way. Let me show, you know what I mean? You're not being corrected, right? I think very early on, we all kind of fall into the mindset of like, oh, they're just boys, let boys be boys. And another one is like, oh, men do what men do, or, oh, it's a man's world. So I just think that when you have that type of like patriarchal dominance on top of the criminalization, there's no one to really correct these boys. Like, you just think about how many young boys are left to their own learning, right? Left to their own exploration, right? That's why you have young boys who get into, certain things at a young age, right? Being introduced to these things by their friends. There's not really any real monitoring in regards to young boys. I think that we're way more protective of our girls than we are our boys. And we don't realize that. Like, we don't look at them like, this is a little boy. This is a child, right? This is someone who needs raising. This is someone who needs discipline and correction. This is someone who needs to be talked to and nurtured and loved, right? For the mothers, like, there's a lot there. And, I definitely don't negate the fact that being a single mother, having to step into the role of a disciplinarian while simultaneously being nurturing, like, I can see that being very challenging. And I don't have any kids, so I would never speak to that with so much, I can't speak to that with confidence, right? Like, I'm not a mother, so who am I? You know what I mean? To really tell you how to go about it per se. But I think that there's something said about that. There's a challenge in that. So what I would love to see is, of course, I talk about mentoring and role modeling. I would love to see more Black men step into those positions, right? And be that. But I just think that there's so much work that has to be done. And I think it's so unfortunate because of this lack of realization in regards to the criminalization, in regards to the perversity that takes place in boyhood, and the lack of emotional vulnerability that kind of comes up after that and so forth. Like, I just think that it sets men up to be in their 40s and 50s where they're dating 20-year-olds and so forth, trying to reclaim what was lost, what was stolen, and what they never had access to in terms of the emotional intelligence and the cognitive abilities to express themselves in such a way to be productive in their relationships, you know what I mean? And to have healthy relationships and to be able to, show up and communicate and, you know what I mean? So it's a really sad thing, but they're deprived of a lot. And I completely understand that, so it's unfortunate when you see men who are in their 40s and 50s and they're able to articulate themselves, but now they're much older, and it's not just in terms of dating and intimacy, right? But it's more so in terms of like, look at all the years, you know what I mean? That he could have been the productive, he could have done other things. He could have been in other spaces. He could have, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot there, right? There's a lot there. And I just wanted to come on here and talk about that. And so I gave grace, I'm not the type of person to, you know what I mean? Because one thing I understand is like, I understand we all have bad days. Sometimes in my job, working in CS, it's like, you be zoned out. You know what I mean? Sometimes you be zoned out. Like, it just be like, the day is just not the day. You know what I mean? So I completely get it. But I definitely think it's something we have to hold people accountable to. And in this particular situation, men accountable to, right? Too often we're willing to turn a blind eye. Too often we're willing to exalt compassion to the extent where we just completely dismiss the harm that it's often caused, right? We see this often in domestic violence relationships. Too often we're willing to be compassionate in the sense of, oh, this is a young Black boy who either has not been raised, right? We may not articulate it as such, but we realize, oh, he didn't have a mom, he didn't have a father, he's got this felon or whatever the case may be. Like, we'll sit with that, but it's like, no, like, we gotta start holding people accountable. So completely not okay. I think that men have to get that together. They got to do better. And one of the things that I would love to see taking place in society would be less men getting on podcasts and YouTube platforms and all of these social media platforms talking to women in terms of how they can be better for a relationship. And I think even in that sense, as I say that, women have also been commodified, right? Because at this point, women are seen as they're like marketing opportunities, right? If you start putting out all this stuff, telling women all they want to hear, they buy your products, they'll show up to your platforms, even if you're berating them, right? Like, so it's like, there's a lot to unpack there, but I just think the right thing for men to do would be able to have those conversations. But you know what? It's fine, because I have something in mind. I'm already going to go ahead and head over to their platform. I'm going to check it out first before I try to give any references, because I ain't been over there yet. And I definitely thought that there was definitely someone who had a podcast who I thought would be sharing some insight in regards to the Black male. And it was not that at all. They were completely perpetuating the same ideologies that hurt us in our community, right? So I was like so taken back. So that's why I'm never really too quick to share a resource until I make sure it's a little bit vetted. But I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. I know this one was smooth and easy. I'm feeling really good. God is so good. The glory be to God. I think about how far I've come in my journey. I think about the passion. I think about the trials and the triumphs, the times I wanted to give up. I think about finding my lane and doing the hard things, having the hard conversations about race, having the hard conversations about, being a Black woman and all of those different things. So coming to the other side of that and just being able to share that light that I've always wanted to share, even though it was in dark spaces, right? I'm so grateful for that. So I thank God for exalting me, and I hope that you guys are having a great day. And I hope that if you are someone who's experiencing this type of abuse at the hands of older men or women or whatever the case may be, you're feeling like the underdog. I hope you felt seen in this podcast episode, because your girl is 100% an underdog. Always been, probably always will be. And I'm completely fine with that. So let me shine a little light on you today. I see you. I love you. Peace out.